One thing we should address, and that's head injuries. Because the players have helmets and padding, unfortunately, head-to-head contact is relatively common, and it's nasty. It happens at high speed. I'm going to show you an example, but be aware, this is not pretty, and if you're squeamish, maybe you should turn away. Whack, not good. Hello, and welcome back. My name is Martin Thomas, and this is the second episode of a series of videos entitled Eagles to Eagles, a Brit's Perspective on US Sports. I was a cardiologist in London and then moved some years ago to the US, just south of LA. I now live in Pennsylvania on the East Coast, and I have retired. I thought it would be fun to describe to you my experience and perspective of a Brit living in the US on US sports. The Eagles referred to in the title are twofold. The Philadelphia Eagles in the US and Crystal Palace, my Premiership soccer team in the UK. So what can you expect from this episode? Well, the focus will be on football, that is American football. But also there's been a ton of stuff going on internationally in sport, specifically, soccer in the UK, the World Cup draw, and also cricket, the Ashes Test. And so we'll cover some of that. But let's start with American football. The first thing to say is that American football has nothing to do with feet. If anything, it's sort of a bit more like rugby, although only loosely, in the UK. So what about the structure of American football? Well, the NFL started in the 1930s. Then a group of owners established the AFL in 1959 and wanted to merge with the NFL, but the NFL were having none of it. So they had a bit of a war for a few years, and then in 1970, they merged to produce the National Football League, consisting of the NFC and the AFC. And you can see that for each conference, there are 4 mini leagues, essentially based on geography. So let's take the Philadelphia Eagles. They're in the NFC East, consisting of Dallas, the New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles, and Washington. Now, why the geography? Well, imagine that you have a game and a New York team is playing an LA team. Okay, and it does happen. Just recently, Philadelphia played the LA Chargers, and indeed, the New York team played in LA. That's 2,700 miles. So traveling 8 hours in the car per day, that's about 4 or 5 days travel. So what about if we were in London? What does 2,700 miles mean? Well, if you go east, you end up in Mongolia. So imagine that you say to your wife, darling, I'm off to the game By the way, it's in Mongolia. I'll be back in a few days. So clearly, the US is enormous in terms of its geography, its size, hence the fact that the leagues are based on geography. So how does it all work? So each team in its four team division will play the other three twice. So that's six. Then a computer makes it up to 17 because there are 17 games in a season, but it's 18 weeks because there's one bye week. At the end of those 17 games, the winners of each division in the AFC and NFC, so that's four from each, that's eight, go into a playoffs. So this is now a playoff. And the three best losers in each also qualify as the so-called wild card. And then finally, the NFC champion plays the AFC champion in the thing called the Super Bowl, massive in the US. So how have the Philadelphia Eagles done over the recent years? Well, actually pretty good. They won in 2018, beating the New England Patriots. In 2023, they lost to Kansas City Chiefs. But in 2024, Philadelphia had revenge and beat the Kansas City Chiefs. So the LA are actually, LA, what am I talking about? Philadelphia are in fact the Super Bowl champions of the moment. Format of the game, well, it's played over 100-yard field. And for NFL, we're talking yards, feet, inches. We don't talk metric at all. Meters, nah, forget it. The game is played. A team kicks off the ball a bit like rugby, and the opposition get possession. They have 4 downs, as it's called, to make 10 yards. If they make 10 yards, then they keep possession for another 4 downs. The idea is to carry the ball into the end zone for what's called a touchdown. The funny thing is, a touchdown has nothing to do with touching the ball down. You don't have to do that, unlike rugby. You just have to cross the end. The ball has to cross the plane of the end zone, and that's 6 points. Then there's a kick from the field that has to go between the posts. If this follows a touchdown, it's 1 point. If it comes from the field of play without a touchdown, then it's 3 points. And so that's the way a game is played over 4 quarters of 15 minutes. Overall, it takes, to be honest, about 3 hours to be played. Let's talk about something else, and that's the referees. Well, it's very different. In soccer, there's 3 people. There's the referee, and there are the 2 linesmen. And their signals are essentially, the referee has a whistle and a hand which shows various things, and a linesman has a flag, which governs who's going to take the throw in. In the NFL, you have 7 referees, and they have a myriad of signals, as you can see. I want to concentrate on 3. I have no idea where these come from, but the first is this. So this signals a safety. No idea where that came from. A safety is when the possession team gets tackled in its own end zone, and that's worth 2 points. The next one I want to share is this. Strange. Doesn't mean the ref has a headache. It means that there's an ineligible player downfield, meaning he can't receive the ball. So that's a bit weird. Only a certain number of people can actually have the ball on the offensive line. The last one I want to show you is really funny, and that's the tripping signal. Uh, Unfortunately, this is rarely used. I guess it's fortunate because we don't like tripping, but it's such a funny signal. Can you imagine 7 referees doing the tripping signal? It would be like a traditional Irish dancing contest. Um, so that would be fun. So they're very different. Um, One thing we should address, and that's head injuries, because the players have helmets and padding. Unfortunately, head-to-head contact is relatively common, and it's nasty. It happens at high speed. I'm going to show you an example, but be aware. This is not pretty, and if you're squeamish, maybe you should turn away. Ooh, whack. Not good. So, unfortunately, recurrent knocks on the head has led to a chronic brain injury in some NFL players who have played a long time in the sport. The only way, well, I don't know the way to get rid of this, but you could take the helmets off. No one in rugby leads with their head. That would be insane. But taking the helmets off and the padding completely destroys the game of NFL and isn't acceptable to the American population. What I haven't mentioned is college football, and that is strange as well. 90,000 people pitch up to watch amateur-ish players who represent their school, university, etc. Nothing like it in the UK. So what's the current standing after week 15? Well, here we go. The Philadelphia Eagles are in the playoffs. Now, why is that? Or would be in the playoffs? Why is that? Well, they lead the NFC East fairly comfortably, and it looks as though they'll go on and win that division, which means they enter the playoffs. Their current record is 8-5. It was much better than that. So the Eagles are well known for, just falling apart, to be honest. In 2022, we were winning all of our games comfortably. And then towards the end of the season, we lost all of our games. We got to the playoffs, but we lost in the first round. Sadly, a similar thing seems to be happening this year. We were doing really nicely, and then we've lost our last 3 games pretty badly. We lost to Dallas, to Chicago, and then just last night, we lost to the LA Chargers in overtime, 22-19. Frankly, an absolutely shocking game. The Eagles supporters are pretty tough, very enthusiastic, but they want heads to roll, especially the offensive coordinator. And unfortunately, it's sort of got out of hand. They'd thrown eggs at his house and various things like that. Luckily, next week we have, a game we should win. We're playing the Las Vegas Raiders, who really are pretty poor. If we don't win that game, well, there's big trouble. One other thing to say is the Kansas City Chiefs look as though they're not even going to make the playoffs. And social media is clearly blaming this on Taylor Swift. Clearly, Taylor Swift. The reason that the Kansas City Chiefs will not qualify for the playoffs is because of the relationship between Taylor Swift and Kelsey. I don't know. Nonsense. So that's the National Football League. And now let's turn to more international matters. The first thing would be soccer. So soccer in the US is pretty big, eh? The MLS and the current champions are LA Galaxy. Of course, I follow Crystal Palace in the Premiership and other competitions. Well, how are we doing? Well, we're doing extraordinarily well. In the last week, we won away to Burnley and away to Fulham. By the way, one interesting point. Fulham play at Craven Cottage, just on the River Thames. The interesting point is this used to be the ground, used to be not the ground itself, but the part of London was owned by Anne Boleyn, who you all know was a wife of Henry VIII. And she did her hunting there until she became the hunted one. And as you know, she was beheaded by Henry VIII. But he was very nice, and he called in an expert swordsperson from France to do the deed. Anyway, enough of that. That's Fulham. You will see that we are in the giddy heights of fourth in the Premiership. We have never been so high. And in fact, it's so high we need oxygen, and I have nosebleeds. So what's next for Crystal Palace? Well, the problem is that we have a terrible fixture congestion. And that's because of our success. We won the FA Cup last year, and now we're in multiple competitions and are having to play every Thursday and every Saturday or Sunday. And to be honest, we just don't have the squad, I don't think, to keep that going. But we'll report back in a couple of weeks. We have multiple games coming up, as you can see. Well, let's turn to the World Cup. So the World Cup draw was last Friday for soccer. Clearly a big occasion. I tried to watch the draw, but honestly, it was extremely painful. It was almost like a propaganda show for Mr. Trump. Nonetheless, the draw was made, and I am just going to look here and find the draw. Okay, so the important groups, as you can see, are as follows. Well, the USA is in the same group as Paraguay, Australia, and a playoff team. Importantly, Canada have a playoff team, Qatar and Switzerland in Group B. With a bit of luck, with 2 wins, that playoff team could be Wales. So that's a great group if Wales can just get through the qualifiers. England play in Group L, and they have Croatia, Ghana, and Panama. Not a bad group. The game against Panama is played in the New York Stadium, relatively close to me. Talking of the stadiums, there are 16. 2 of them are in Canada. That's Vancouver and Toronto. And 3 in Mexico, Guadalajara, Monterrey, and Mexico City. And the other 11 are dotted around the US. So I thought, this is great. I can easily, it's 2 hours to drive from my house into New York to watch England play Panama. Well, unfortunately, I looked up the prices of tickets, and even in the highest seats, way away from the actual field of play, $800. If you want a decent seat, then it's actually $2,500 to $3,000. Well, I'm not going to do that yet, but I'll wait and hope that the tickets don't sell because they're so expensive, and then the prices should come down. Okay, let's turn to the last sport, and that is cricket. So the second test of the Ashes series, England against Australia, has just finished. It was a day-night game. Strange, unusual for a test match. They play with a pink ball. Again, strange. Most cricket is played with a red ball or a white ball. As I said in the last video, cricket is weird in that they stop play to have lunch and tea during a day game. For a day-night game, it becomes tea and supper. How strange is that? Anyway, the second test has happened. It happened in Brisbane. We lost the first in Perth, and we lost the second in Brisbane in 4 days. I mean, we are a little bit of a shambles at the moment. Why is that? Well, we've been playing this thing called Bazball, B-A-Z, which is a crazy type of cricket where you take big risks, you score very fast in terms of runs per over. And that's worked beautifully against the not so good teams, but actually is a real problem against the good teams. Where did Baz come from? Well, actually, it came from our coach, Brendan McCullum. His nickname is Baz, so it's Brendan Baz McCullum. I don't think we'll be seeing much Bazball in the future. During the next video, we should be able to tell you about the third test. I fear it could be a 5-0 whitewash, in which case I think Brendan McCullum and Bazball cricket might be finished. But let's remain optimistic, and I'll report back in due course. So that's this video. We'll have another one before Christmas. Lots of activity, both in the NFL, in the US. Baseball, which we will concentrate on next time, is actually out of season, as they say, and will restart in the spring, but we can still discuss elements of baseball. In the meantime, whichever team you support, whichever sport you support, please support your team with passion. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you and goodbye.